Welcome. I'm the devil. So glad you could finally join me in hell. Glad because you're bound to have a throat lozenge on you, right? I really need a throat lozenge.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Jeff Onan.
And Jeff and I just had like 40 minutes of technical issues getting ready for this episode. Our live stream was not in sync.
My batteries were dead.
Yeah, it was terrible, and I'm in a bad mood right now. And so apologies, Jeff, if I get a little saucy towards you during this episode. I'm trying to come down off my agitation mountain.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to really slap ourselves in the face to get energetic for this one, because it's an exciting topic and it deserves excitement from us. But also, we've just been beaten down.
I'm gonna actually slap myself in the face. I'm gonna do this for real. This isn't me doing silly sound effects. Hold on. I'm gonna do this because of my love for this game. I love it so much, I will self-flagellate for it. Here we go. Ow! Fuck. Let me do it again.
I want to do it.
Oh! God damn.
I want to do it.
Go ahead, slap yourself in the face, Jeff. All the cool kids are doing it.
I'm afraid. No, I'm going to do it. Oh, okay, that did hurt. All right, good. Now we're ready to go. Right?
I had insomnia last night. I didn't get a wink of sleep. And I now know I should have just slapped myself in the face this morning. I should have slapped myself. I'm going to slap myself a third time. This is great. Oh, no. Oh.
I think you just need to build a robot contraption that sits above your bed, and then as soon as you lean up in the morning, a paddle with like a gloved hand on it just spins in a circle and slaps you. You know, like a Rube Goldberg kind of elaborate mechanism.
That just sounds like a masturbation device, Jeff. And I am intrigued, and I will want to patent something with you, but we'll discuss that after the episode. No, we're going to be talking about Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. And we already gave our first impressions, or at least I gave my first impressions with Mitchell pre-release, but now that the game is out, I feel like we can start getting into spoiler territory. And the way we're going to do this, the game is not traditionally structured like your Tropical Freeze or the original Yooka-Laylee even, in that it's not divided by worlds. So I had to think how we were going to divide out these episodes, because this definitely requires more than one episode, and I know a lot of DK Vine editors and staffers want to be in on this discussion. So to space it out, I figured we would do it by paywalls, and paywalls are what Trowzer runs on the overworld. Trowzer the snake, of course, if you're not up on your penis innuendos. He is the snake character from the original Yooka-Laylee. He's back in Impossible Lair, and he basically blocks your path and extorts you for twit coins, which twit coins are... I mean, obviously it's a pun on Bitcoin, but I don't understand if he's minting his own currency, why he requires you to retrieve it for him.
I have a theory on that.
Okay.
So Trowzer makes the coins and then he hides them in the difficult to find places. And because they're difficult to find and Yooka-Laylee find them, and they go through a lot of effort to get the coins, they attribute a lot of value to those coins. And because they do that and the other NPCs see them go through that trouble and do that, Trowzer basically just artificially gave his manufactured currency value. So then when they give it back to him, he can go and spend it on stuff, and people are like, oh, twit coins, I heard about those. They're fucking bullshit, really hard to find. Here, I'll give you $1,000 for that, or whatever. And so he goes and he gets, he buys barbecues or whatever he buys. So yeah, that's the trick. He's artificially invented his own currency and then made it seem valuable. He's a good salesman, that Trowzer.
I really like that explanation, and I will run it by daily, I think, just to see if we can make a canon. Yeah, that's good.
Rad. All right.
Because I was wondering about that. I was like, this doesn't actually make sense. This is sort of like Cranky wanting you to collect the hero coins that he himself like minted and then hid, and at the end of the day, Funky actually got them and kept them and opened up some casinos in Donkey Kong Land 3 with Bazaar Bear, of course. But I'm just rambling now. Yeah, the paywalls are what separates the overworld, and I thought, you know, I could really divide discussion like into thirds of the game, and then maybe another episode for the Impossible Lair itself. So that's the way we're going to do it. It's not going to be a traditional way we handle big releases here on the Kongversation. Like back in season 2, we did it by worlds for Tropical Freeze. Back in season 5, we did it for worlds for the original Yooka-Laylee. This is the way we're going to do it for the rest of season 7 as we sprinkle these Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair episodes throughout. They're not going to be concurrent. They'll just be popping up every couple of weeks. Because I'm taking my time with the game. Jeff, I know you are either done with it or you're nearly done with it.
I've done everything but the Impossible Lair itself. I've gotten kind of like halfway through. Yeah. And then I kind of haven't tried. I have to carve out a solid chunk of time to just repetitively, work my way through that and do multiple attempts at it. So yeah. I just haven't had the time, but I've done everything else, which is a substantial amount of stuff.
Yeah, so if
it's a lot of content.
It is a lot of content. It's deceptively a lot of content because you don't think it's going to be when you just hear it explained to you, but then when you actually play the game, you're like, oh, this is a robust experience. It's actually quite a bit more. I would say it's at least as hefty as Tropical Freeze, but it's definitely like the overworld just adds so much to it, which I'm sure we're going to gush all over that overworld here in a bit. But yeah, if you are playing through Impossible Lair or you want to get Impossible Lair but you have not gotten it yet, just warning, we will be talking spoilers up to the third paywall on the overworld, which is roughly the first 8 chapters of the game. And the state changes as well, minus the first chapter state change, which I imagine comes later. But we will try to refrain from talking about anything that's beyond that third paywall. We'll do our best. It gets a little muddled after a certain amount of time, so, apologies if anything creeps in, but we'll do our best.
But if anything does creep in, it won't be like, a drastic, huge spoiler that ruins the game for you.
It'll be minor stuff, like I might reference...
We won't tell you who Laylee's real dad is.
Yeah.
Gotta wait.
No, it might be something like I'll reference a battalion member or something like that. That might be it. But yeah, nothing huge. So anyway, real quick, let's get to some due diligence. I just want to plug our Patreon, dkvine.com/Patreon. If you back us at $5 and up a month, you can listen to these Kongversation episodes live, which is a real treat, especially when we have 40 minutes of technical difficulties. That's just joy that you can't replicate by any other means. Imagine tuning in to watch your favorite TV show and they can't get the cameras to fucking work. Like, imagine that. That's great. Wouldn't you want to be a part of that? So support us on Patreon, dkvine.com/Patreon. And time is ticking. This won't be the last time I plug this, but it's getting close. Do whatever you can to help us get Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa on the podcast for the big spotlight episode for Mario Golf (Game Boy Color) in just a week or so. Wow. Where does the time go? Well, I don't know, but I certainly know it doesn't involve ever making contact with Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa, because that has not happened, Jeff. I have not spoken with him. I've not been in touch with his people. I don't even remember what he looks like.
Well, what about your people? Have your people been in touch with his people?
Jeff, you are my people.
Shit. I forgot to do it then. Oh, damn it.
God damn it, I need better people.
So please, let us know on Patreon if you want to be Hyle's people.
What?
You're looking to replace me any day now.
It's just too much work to train somebody new. like explain to them what Donkey Kong
Right.
is. I can't do it.
How many other of your underlings are going to be able to make Paul McCartney and Wings references? It's a high ask. You know, there's not a lot of resumes with that on there.
You and Matt are pretty much the only ones on staff, I feel like, who could do it. Cameron might, but I feel like he would get lost in the weeds when you really get into the albums nobody likes but us. You know, your Wings Wildlife, your Red Rose Speedways.
Yeah, we were just talking about Red Rose Speedway. We both love that. That's a great album. So, you know, let us know in the live stream chat what your favorite song is off of the medley that is on the Red Rose Speedway album.
Yeah, Lazy
This
Dynamite.
is good content.
Of course, it's Lazy Dynamite because I'm like, why is that Dynamite so lazy?
It is a thinker. It does ask all the right questions.
I feel like that would be a character in Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Just the Lazy Dynamite. Just wants to sleep. Doesn't want to be blowing things up. Just wants to lounge about. It's dynamite-y ways.
So
yeah.
Yooka-Laylee. This is going to be a good one.
Oh,
We're off to a killer start.
Did I mention I didn't sleep last night?
You didn't sleep last night, Hyle? I didn't sleep last night.
What's going on?
I pulled a full all-nighter.
Yeah, that's stupid because...
Yeah, it's not really smart.
We're not in college anymore, Jeff. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, well...
I'm worried I knocked a tooth loose when I was slapping myself. Don't slap yourself.
I'm pretty red in the face.
Yeah.
And it's mostly from the slap.
I haven't looked in a mirror because all my mirrors are on my ceiling because I like to watch myself when I have my Rube Goldberg device going to town on me. And I haven't looked up to see how red I am from the slappings.
Yeah, I mean, that's prime social media content that you know, where's the selfie? Where's the Instagram? Come on, get on it.
I'll do like 7 days of slappings and just see what my face looks like.
God, you'll be as raw as the second half of Red Rose Speedway.
Yeah.
Which I would describe as raw.
It's very raw. It's very It's like he wasn't quite sure what to do post Beatles, and he was like, "Gonna do this album, but I don't want to have any polish on this album. We're just gonna fart out some songs, and we're gonna see what happens." And like, the amazing thing is with Paul McCartney, like they're all catchy. Like you find yourself humming them. And you're like, well, fuck, when did this song...
his ability to put together a catchy melody is just unparalleled.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I can hear, like, there isn't much in a way of his discography that I haven't heard at this point, but I can listen, when I listen to something new of his, and I'm just like, oh, I don't much care for this. And then, like, 3 days later, I'm in the shower, and it just, boop, it's in my head. And
that's Egypt Station to a T.
Yeah.
It's a garbage album that you... It is in your head all the time. It really is.
And then a few years from now, you'll be like, you know, Egypt Station. You know what album people don't like, but I really like Egypt Station. And that's basically the way you become a Paul McCartney fan is just like, oh, that's shit. Oh, actually, that's brilliant. And fuck you if you disagree.
Yeah. All right, so we probably need to talk about the Impossible Lair.
Probably do. People are probably getting irritated with us at this point that we're not talking about Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair.
Well, you got to start us off. I mean, you're the host. What do you want to? You know, I'm just a guest. I haven't even prepared.
Yeah, I prepared, and then I had to restart my computer, and I had to get all my preparations back. So anyway, all right, but that's really kind of an allegory for the Impossible Lair, is it not? You go to play it, and then you die, and you have to start over again. And that's really what this episode has been like, the Impossible Lair. And that's where you start the game. So I love how the game just jumps right into it. There's no complicated like story setup like the original game. Literally from the title screen, boom, you're in the context of the universe. They are jumping through the Grand Tome. And it's just, you don't need any context, really. It's just Queen Phoebe has requested help because Capital B is in this Grand Tome. Presumably the Grand Tome he was sucked into in the original Yooka-Laylee, even though that looked like Tribal Stack Tropics. But hopefully they're going to patch that because they said they're going to put the new 64-bit tonic character models into the 64-bit tonic of the original Yooka-Laylee. So we know there's going to be more content updates for that coming. So maybe they're going to patch that Grand Tome finally. But yeah, Capital B has been in this Grand Tome presumably since the original Yooka-Laylee ended, and he's finally like taken it over. So Queen Phoebe of the Royal Stingdom has sent for Yooka and Laylee, requested their help because of their exploits in the original game, and they're going through the Grand Tome as the title screen starts. It's just a lovely touch. It's kind of refreshing. You know, Mitchell and I were talking about this game's budget because it's an indie title, so this game's budget is considerably less than Tropical Freeze. But what they're able to do to kind of hide that, it's remarkable because, you know, Tropical Freeze had that gorgeously rendered opening cutscene, and this game can't do that, so they're just like, boom, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're way more comfortable in this game than they were in their first Yooka-Laylee game in being able to do less with more, and like I think they fully understood what their capabilities were and what is the most efficient way to maximize what they can get out of what they have. Obviously, they're not going to do these huge, like, you know, almost Pixar or DreamWorks quality full motion video cutscenes like Tropical Freeze can do. But you're right, they do an awesome job of like integrating the storytelling just into that scene in engine without expensive cutscenes.
Yeah, there's a lot of just confidence with this game, and it's just abundant in everywhere. Like, they know what they're doing, leave them alone. And yeah, you didn't really feel that in the original Yooka-Laylee, partially because they were trying to serve so many masters with the Kickstarter campaign. But yeah, here they're just making the game they want to make, and it just works. So yeah, and then you kind of go through this tutorial area as you enter the Royal Stingdom in the midst of Capital B's like attack or whatever, where he's taking over, and yeah, just this nice little introductory bit where you get a handle on all the moves, which, you know, is pretty basic. It's a 2D platformer at heart, so that's, you know, there's not a lot to learn. You know, the roll jump and everything. The lovely Donkey Kong reference when you do the roll jump off a ledge, and Capital B says, like, even a stupid ape can do that or something.
Yeah, the Donkey Kong reference within the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
They definitely have a lot. I think they have a more confident grasp on, like, you know, what their legacy is and how much they want to acknowledge that, but also be their own thing. The first game kind of shied away from those types of references, and for the most part, I guess.
Yeah, there was Blasto and Blastooey and that, and you know, of course, it was more of a straight-on spiritual successor. The original Yooka-Laylee was to Banjo-Kazooie, so you had all these things that were analogs to things from that game. Pages were jiggies, quills were music notes, Ghost Riders were Jinjos. But here, It's just taking those elements from the original Yooka-Laylee and not necessarily fitting them for Donkey Kong Country, but really just utilizing them in a way that makes sense for this game. And I think in that way, it gives everything in the world of Yooka-Laylee a lot more depth and a lot more reason for existing, independent of just being Banjo-Kazooie, but not Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, absolutely. Example, like, Dr. Puzz in the first game is just, you know, your mumbo-jumbo analog. Dr. Puzz in this game serves a very different role, and instead of every time I see Dr. Puzz, I just think of, oh, that's this game's mumbo-jumbo. Now I think of Dr. Puzz as Dr. Puzz.
Yes!
I think of it as Now, and that is just translated to every character. Every character now feels like its own character instead of just, well, this is this game's analog for some one-to-one translation from Banjo-Kazooie. Every character feels like they've been fleshed out by the new context they have, the greater fleshed out personality they have, and they all are now their own characters. They don't feel derivative anymore.
Yeah, and it's something I said on the DK Vine forum, I think, or maybe on Twitter. I said it on Twitter, and then I elaborated on the DK Vine forum that basically this game feels like what Donkey Kong Country 2 felt like for the Yooka-Laylee corner of this universe. It basically makes you understand the world a whole lot more. It adds greater depth and context to everything, and it makes you love the characters a lot harder than you did initially. Because, the first Donkey Kong Country, I fell in love with it when it came out. I loved all the characters, but there was this certain distance I had between really liking them and understanding how their fictional world worked. And then Donkey Kong Country 2 came along and everything just kind of clicked into place. Like, okay, so Cranky has a wife and she lives over there, and that's the Kremlin Island, and that's where the Kremlins are from. And there's this mystical earth energy underneath there, and that's where the Kremlins evolved. And all of this stuff that just kind of really made the world feel a lot more real and made the characters feel a lot more real. That's what this game does to the original Yooka-Laylee. I can't wait to go back and play the original Yooka-Laylee again, now that I feel like I know a lot of these characters a lot better. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, oh, sorry. You know what, Leah, just move on. I didn't have a really
we could go on and go on and go on about the stupid stuff that we obsess over, and we will, but we probably should, keep moving through the linear course of events here. So basically, this all sets up your first attempt in the Impossible Lair. The game doesn't give you a choice. You start in the Impossible Lair. And I died immediately, but I think I also wanted to die because I knew, if I'm good enough, I can just beat the game right here and right now. And at that point, I was not good enough because I wasn't confident enough with the game or its controls or its mechanics or the way it worked. But I also just wanted to get to the game. I wanted to, because I wanted to play through everything. So I just was kind of like, let's just kill me now because I in no way want to attempt the Impossible Lair whatsoever at this point. So it didn't take long for me to die.
I think I made it almost 20%, and then died.
That's pretty good. That's pretty impressive, because, win, lose, or die, if you win, you can beat the game, and supposedly there's even I don't think I'm spoiling anything here because it doesn't matter. If you beat the Impossible Lair in one go, you get a secret ending. I don't foresee myself doing that at any time soon, but also I want to actually see the entire game. I don't want to just, I beat this one really hard level, the end, and just. But if you lose, you get to go out to the overworld and actually experience, the 98% of the game that's not the Impossible Lair. So, that's what I did. I died, and I'm proud of it, Jeff. I'm proud that I was rubbish at it because there's the overworld is just, it's magnificent.
Well, so they kick you out, you die, and then you get the context of really the motivating force of the whole adventure.
Yeah,
which is that the battalion guards help you to beat the Impossible Lair by giving you an extra hit point, and now you have no battalion guards because Capital B hypnotizes them with his hive mind device. Mm-hmm. So now you're kind of pushed along on your adventure is go out, find more battalion guards because they're trapped at the end of all the in-game levels.
Yeah, and
now you're off to the races.
Yeah, so. Like I said, it's just a really clever conceit to how you can potentially, beat the game in just one sitting, but it gives you a reason then to go actually play the game. I like how non-linear that concept is, and I know that's a big like design ethos of Gavin Price, but it's kind of brilliant, and I also really like how they set the stage for how this all works, because we were confused when the game was first shown right before E3. We were having debates. We were like, is the overworld in the Royal Stingdom? It must be, but they're jumping into books for these chapters. That doesn't make any sense. And it's all explained here at the very beginning. So the Impossible Lair it's in the Grand Tome of the Royal Stingdom, and then that Grand Tome is sitting right in front of Hivory Towers in Shipwreck Creek. And so what happens is Queen Phoebe essentially pulls out all of the chapters of the Grand Tome, and they get spread about the area around Shipwreck Creek. So that forms the crux of the overworld, and how you could be accessing the same Grand Tome from multiple books.
Yeah, and I think the way they structure, I mean, everything is so tightly structured. Everything, every collectible, it all feeds into this loop. Everything, it's just like probably the most tightly designed platformer in terms of how beating the levels, finding the hidden collectibles, exploring the overworld, how all of these things feed in on themselves, like a snake eating its own tail. So you explore the overworld to discover new levels, but you also discover tonics, and then the tonics feed into the levels because they are modifications to how you play the levels. Yeah. Then you go in the levels, and getting in the levels will get you the battalion guards, which you need for the overall goal of the game, beating the Impossible Lair. But you also find twit coins, which you need to progress the overworld by paying off the paywalls, and quills. That's really the only collectibles you find in levels are twit coins and quills. And the quills are used also to progress on the overworld by buying, cages and doorways and things, that some of the stuff that is needed to solve some of the puzzles. But also you use them to buy the tonics, which you find on the overworld, but you use in the levels. So I feel like when we saw this at E3, you had these two gameplay styles, and we didn't really know or believe that they meshed well. That exploring the overworld and playing 2D levels, they felt like two different games on top of each other.
Yeah.
But in execution, they're so tightly wound together in a like elaborate, tight tapestry that it feeds in on itself so perfectly. It's just astonishing, because I can't think of any other platformer, even any of the classic platformers that we love that are DKU. None of them operate that deliberately with all their collectibles.
I took some shit in my first impressions mini I did with Mitchell, because I said, it actually doesn't remind me of Tropical Freeze so much as it does classic Donkey Kong Country. And yeah, obviously there are comparisons to be made to Tropical Freeze, obviously. And, I'm sure you'll correct me on that, Jeff. But I think really where I see the callbacks to where the DKC trilogy from Rare left off is with the focus on exploration and kind of not level gimmicks so much, but essentially each level has a reason for being, a crux. And it's a lot less frantic and focused on speed so much as it is the DKC2 and DKC3. Let me explore every last inch of this stage and try to suss out where these twit coins are. But then the overworld really is just an drastic evolution of where DKC3 left off. This is exactly what I wanted out of a hypothetical DKC4, post Microsoft buyout of Rare. When I thought about Nintendo reviving Donkey Kong Country one day, before Donkey Kong Country Returns, this is kind of where I imagined the map screen would go, because I wanted it to build directly off of DKC3. I didn't want to go back. And that's why Returns, for as much as I love that, felt disappointing in so many ways, because the map screen was so basic. It was an afterthought. And the overworld of Impossible Lair is not an afterthought. It is not there to just connect the chapters. It is such a vital part of the game. And it is honestly maybe my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. And in terms of being an evolution of Donkey Kong Country 3, but also taking so much, learning so much from other games, other top-down adventure games that Rare made for, like, especially on the handheld team. One way that it's improved over Donkey Kong Country 3, that had kind of an explorable overworld that let you go a little bit off of the rails and move around freely, and it had secrets to find, and it had quests with the Brothers Bear, but pretty much 100% of the progress that you make on the overworld of Donkey Kong Country 3 is tied to complete post-game, the Banana Bird quest, which is like, it doesn't feed into your quest at that time. It's a bonus thing that happens after everything else in the game is completely finished. So it doesn't feel necessary. It doesn't feel like it's synergized well with the platforming gameplay, or like because the collectible that you get for those puzzles is just this post game, the last thing you do at the end of the game thing to get a secret ending. But with Impossible Lair, the way that all the puzzles feed into everything you're doing, it feels so much more robust, and you spend time exploring, and you feel like the progress you're making is really important because it's necessary. You're not going to get access to more levels if you don't solve these puzzles. And then on the flip side, you're not going to get access to more puzzles on the overworld unless you explore the levels and get some of those twit coins. So they really nailed that feeling of every action, whether it's beating levels, whether it's exploring levels, whether it's solving puzzles on the overworld. All of them feed into the journey in equal parts, and they don't feel like separate tasks. They all feel tied together.
Yeah, and actually, I hadn't thought about it until just now, but the battalion guards are sort of refining the concept of banana birds and making them a more vital part of the experience. Because they are just the little tiny yellow critters that need rescuing because they've been encased in crystal. But here, they're not just this arbitrary thing that don't reveal their purpose until like the 11th hour of the game, and then only then to give you a very stupid ending. But they're actually just tied into the completion of the stages. And actually, if you want the secret ending, you have to, avoid them entirely and just beat the Impossible Lair in one go. But it's actually just, you're right. Everything is so interconnected and feeds off of each other. And you can't have one thing without the other. And it just builds and escalates. And it just, God, I love it. This game, oh my God. Like, I'm really wondering, I haven't sat down and really tried to chart out where I would place this game in the rankings of the Donkey Kong Country games. Do I dare put them in my hallowed Donkey Kong Country rankings? But God, this is so close to the top at this point. It really is for me as well. I agree. I'm not saying I'd have to point out at this point. I'm not saying it's Donkey Kong Country 2,
right.
Jeff. I'm not going to go crazy because that is my favorite game of all time, but oh my God, watch out, everyone else. This is...
Well, I do want to take this point to point out how, obviously, we're going to just constantly make comparisons to Donkey Kong Country games here because, that is where the bulk of the interesting discussion is, when in the places where this game diverges from Donkey Kong Country or improves on Donkey Kong Country or whatever. But they clearly didn't make this game from the ground up thinking this is us making our version of a Donkey Kong Country game without the characters. They've taken it in. They're making a 2D platformer. It's got a lot of similarities and obviously they've learned a lot from having developed Donkey Kong Country games. But they take inspiration from a lot of different sources, and they have made a game that, although I'm going to compare it to Donkey Kong Country games, it really is its own unique beast in so many ways. That, there's things about it that are different that I wouldn't necessarily want to be done in a Donkey Kong Country game. Because this is just its own new thing. This is how they would do it in the Impossible Lair. But there's other ways in which it clearly improves on Donkey Kong Country, and I wish they would, I'd love to see a Donkey Kong Country game come out and build on this.
Obviously, a lot of key personnel who worked on the Donkey Kong Country games throughout the years worked on this game, but there's also new blood in there as well. So it's not just here's us doing Donkey Kong Country again with these XPs in the place of all the traditional characters and elements. It's not that at all. It's a lot like, when Paul McCartney made Band on the Run, he wasn't setting out to just do another version of Sgt. Pepper with Denny Lane. No. He was making a new album, but, you're obviously going to compare it a little bit to his past work because Paul McCartney did work on Sgt. Pepper as well. Right.
And we've said before in the past how Denny Lane's previous work with the Moody Blues is basically like the Saber Man, the Saber Wolf of the DKU. So I think you can't underestimate how much Saber Wolf factors into the Impossible Lair, even though it's not a DKU game. In the same way that the Moody Blues is not part of the Beatles universe, even though it feeds into Band on the Run.
I think IGN even brought that up in their review of the game.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
But real quick, you kind of brought up how the game is different than Tropical Freeze. I want to point out the ways in which it is and the ways in which it isn't, but I'll try to be succinct.
Sure.
Because I put a lot of thought into this over playing the game. Obviously, the comparisons to Tropical Freeze directly are going to be there because that's the most contemporary game to compare this to. And I think that visually, the way the game presents, because it is a three-dimensional game. It's not sprite based or ACM graphics or whatever. It's not done in the pre-rendered sprites that Donkey Kong Country is. So because it is a 3D game, it's going to have a slightly different visual look to it, but the way they have their 2.5D perspective, the way they present levels in a cutout kind of way, is very Tropical Freeze or very Donkey Kong Country Returns. And that's not necessarily a given because there are plenty of other 3D platformers out there that do 3D or do 2D side-scrolling with 3D models, and they don't look like that, like Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, where they render their levels like a cutout ant farm look, and it's very different. So this definitely takes its visual look from Tropical Freeze. There's a lot of little things with momentum, things with the way the ghost quills operate feel very very Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze, like those games, banana sprites and things. But all that being said, ultimately I have to agree with you. The game has a lot of ways where it feels more like the Donkey Kong Country original trilogy and specifically Donkey Kong Country 3. Some of those ways are there's no air meter in the underwater levels.
Oh, thank Christ.
The rolling mechanic has you roll. If you roll through enemies, you continue to maintain your roll.
Oh, thank
which is
Christ.
Different than Retros games. You instantly grab ropes when you jump into the air next to a rope. Whereas in Retros games, we're focused on this gameplay mechanic of like anytime you want to grab something, you have to hold down the grab button, including ropes. So that was very different than the Donkey Kong Country games. This one feels more like those. Although they depart in a couple ways because in Donkey Kong Country, you had to hold the grab button while you were carrying an item like a cannonball or a barrel. And in this game, I think you just toggle the button. You press it once to pick it up. You press it again to throw it.
Which took me a while to figure out because I didn't realize you didn't have to keep holding it because instinct was just kicking in. And
you definitely take a while to get used to how it differs from both from Tropical Freeze.
I'm gonna thank Buddha for that one. Actually,
I don't get it. Anyway, the biggest departure in the levels themselves, in the actual gameplay, is there's no lives There's no game over screens. There's just if you get hit once, you lose Laylee, but you can get her back, which is a huge, in my opinion, massive improvement over the Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze method of treating the second Kong as a power-up that you don't have by default and you can lose. This game does not treat Laylee like a power-up, even though you can lose her. It treats Laylee like the default.
Yes.
You always have Laylee when you respawn at a checkpoint or when you enter a level, and losing Laylee is just a punishment. It's not the opposite where it's a reward that you sometimes get Laylee, and you're like, yes, it's the default to have it, and it really improves the moveset all around and the feeling of buddy, the buddy feel between the two characters, because by default you're always with both of them like 90% of the time. So that health system is just
it's a
so
subtle
different.
difference, but it does make all of the difference as far as just perception and enjoyability when you're playing the game. And it's very easy to get her back too. They're a lot more liberal with the Laylee bells than they are with DK barrels or did barrels or Dix
The biggest
barrels
difference was the biggest difference is that if you take a hit, you have a set amount of time to immediately get Laylee back.
Yoshi's Island
instead
style,
of
right?
Right, yeah, Yoshi's Island. Yeah, that's huge. It completely changes the way the game treats hit points and death. For me, it's great because I never really would have done it myself. If I was in charge of designing a game, I would not have thought to remove lives completely and do it the way they do it. But once you play it, it just makes all the other ones feel outdated.
Because
it
what's
just
the
feels
point
like
of
the
lives?
evolution.
What is the point of lives? I mean, even in the original Donkey Kong Country, you had lives, and then basically if you got a game over before reaching a save point, like the only penalty was you would have to replay what you didn't save. This game basically replicates that, but with checkmates. So any quills you collect, any twit coins you collect, before reaching a checkmate, you'll have to recollect when you die and you respawn at the most recent checkmate. And the checkmates are the checkpoints of the game.
Lives as a concept are just an outdated holdover from back when they needed a way for quarters to translate to gameplay. And we don't pay quarters to keep playing, so there's no reason to have lives. If I have infinity quarters, I don't need lives.
I feel like it's just such an ingrained part of video games, specifically video games that date back to a certain era, like the genres that date back to the early days of gaming and everything that spawned out of that. So it's something that's we're kind of clung to for no reason. And I would think back to the original Banjo-Kazooie had lives, and then 2 years later with Tui, they were like, why do we even pay lip service to this anymore? Let's just get rid of it. And nobody missed it. And it's great that we have a Donkey Kong Country type platformer now that has finally done the same thing. I love balloons too. I love the red balloons too. They're iconic. We don't need them. Let's just move on. Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. I think we've done enough kind of general gameplay. I can keep talking all day about the nuances of the gameplay of the platforming and everything. But we kind of want to get through a third of the content of the game. So lead the way.
We're not going to be going into the chapters bit by bit, as we were kind of joking about before the episode started. We're not going to be saying, I really liked this ledge, and that was a good pit, wasn't it? I enjoyed falling in that pit. Let me describe to you the way the vines hang in this particular part. As much as I would like to do that, we'll save that for the eventual 8-part spotlight episode in 20 years. What I want to do here is kind of just go through the blow through, really just say what we like and just, I don't know, have fun. Have fun talking about this great game, because it's rare that a game comes along like this that really just hits me in all the right spots. It makes me feel like a kid again when I got a new Donkey Kong Country game, or I got something that I was really into, and it basically became my whole world for a while. That's what Impossible Lair is for me right now, and I'm damn giddy about it.
Yeah, and so you want to go over also the this part of the overworld as well, right? Like puzzles that are getting us here, and like not all of them, but like what stands out.
Yeah,
or do you just want to talk about the levels?
No, I want to get into bits of the overworld. Yeah, because this is really where the overworld starts to reveal itself for you, and it's a slow burn kind of thing because you don't realize the depth or the abundance of it right away. It's more just like, oh, I can't wait to get into a chapter. I can't wait to get into some 2D platforming. But eventually, like, the overworld just worms its way into your heart, and it takes it over, and then you're a captive in your own body to its whims, whatever they may be. I think what did it for me with the overworld, where I was like, okay, I'm fucking won over with this. And yes, I had to throw in the expletive there. It was vital to relay how much it excited me at this point, was when we got back to Shipwreck Creek, where we got back to Yooka and Laylee's home, the batship crazy. And it was just recreating that in a top-down perspective, but just the amount of detail and thought they put into this overworld, that's when it really just sunk in, like, okay, this isn't just like a more clever map screen. This is a living, breathing world I'm inhabiting.
Yeah, and it when you start the game at Ivory Towers, I know that I recognize that location, like this is not a new place. This is a place I've been, but it's not really until you get to Shipwreck Creek that the overworld's place in the world, its place in your mind's eye of where it fits in the Yooka-Laylee lore. That's when everything kind of fits together, and you're like, oh, okay, so Ivory Towers is there, and this is a batship crazy, and all this other shit I'm exploring is just stuff I couldn't get to in the first game. Mm-hmm. But like it's all there. It's just rendered in a new like top-down style, and that's when it really kind of like you wrap your head around what the overworld is and where it fits in the Yooka-Laylee lore. Yeah, it's awesome, and you get to see a few returning friendly faces in this section of the game. Dr. Puzz, Blasto. Was it Blasto Kablooey? I never get the names right on the bird in the cannon.
I think it's Kablooey, yeah. Blasto and Kablooey. Blastooey is the brother of Blasto.
Oh, that's right. See, that's where I always get mixed up. Then, obviously, there's Plankers, although Plankers are now a drone. They're not an individual, but it's a species of.
I don't
Plankers.
know. I will have to inquire about this, but I don't know if Planker is a singular character and the species.
I've already screwed up because that's a spoiler, I guess, for later in the game.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, sorry. There's your one spoiler of the day. I've screwed the pooch. But anyway, we don't have to dwell on the Plankers.
We don't have to dwell on your dog sex. No.
Yeah. No.
No. So anyway, yeah. What I really like about the overworld too is how it takes all of these characters from the original Yooka-Laylee that would have no purpose in a 2D platformer, and it recontextualizes them into like the Brothers Bear role or the Kong Helper role. Basically, it makes the equivalent of the map screen such a robust place, which, and I'm not trying to knock the retro games because I love them, but one of my biggest gripes with the retro games is there's a distinct lack of that, of a sense of community, a sense of society in this world of Donkey Kong that was so robust in the rare games. Even just like, oh yeah, Cranky's Cabin, Funky's Flights, Candy's Save Point. Just the ability to visit those characters on the map screen made you feel like you weren't on this journey alone. And especially by the time you got to Donkey Kong Country 3 and you had, 13 brothers who were also bears, all with just weird eccentric gimmicks, all tied to their name somehow. It really just made the map screen a fascinating place to be. And that sense of community and that celebration of character, that's a hallmark of Rare and Playtonic design that unfortunately was stripped away to the absolute bare necessities, not brother bare necessities, unfortunately, in the retro games, to the point where, well, we can just consolidate all of these functions into one shop. Why complicate it? Well, you complicate it because it makes it more interesting and fun. That's why you complicate it. I know you have some thoughts on this, though, because you've said that to me.
You look at, Donkey Kong Country 3, you have 13 bears to interact with. You have 4 Kong helpers, one of which doesn't even have his own function. I'm talking Cranky Kong.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have his own house or tent. He's just part of, Swanky. In theory, Swanky Kong could have been your opponent in the Swanky's bonus games, but they put Cranky Kong in there because that's way more fun. Now you have more characters. And then, so you got 4 Kongs, you got 13 bears, you have half a dozen animal buddies, you have your own dynamic duo that are the stars of the game, plus Diddy and DK, which are part of the plot of the game. And that's over 20 characters right there already. That's closer to 30 characters, all just fleshing out the world. And Retro's games, they have an efficiency in their design that is a hallmark of kind of an old school line of Nintendo thinking.
Yeah.
That was always the defining line, the line in the sand that made a Nintendo design different from a Rare design back in the day. And those lines are blurring these days because there's so many young, up-and-coming people within Nintendo, younger teams and stuff that are doing stuff that are wildly against that old line of thinking. You look at Splatoon and its level of world building and many characters for every possible function that normally you would just stuff into a menu. They create a character with a shop that will be that specific function or whatever. They do that in Splatoon. They do that, they've got ARMS, the fighting game is just filled with characters. Super Mario Odyssey is a lot more character driven than your typical Mario platformer. Things like that. But the retro games, they've got this efficiency. They consolidate everything down into one shop, or other functions they're just done through a menu or done automatically. And, you collect puzzle pieces to unlock concept art. And when you get all the puzzle pieces, you're just given the concept art on the home screen. There's no fanfare, really.
Right.
Why couldn't that be an NPC house that will accept your puzzle pieces to put them together and create the concept art? And maybe that's Wrinkly Kong or Candy Kong or something. Why can't when you need to use the KONG letters to unlock the K temples, which are like the Lost World levels, kind of, they could have an NPC there, maybe a defected Snowmad, if we're talking Tropical Freeze, that will basically, you can buy your way into these secret temples in the same way that Clubba from Clubba's Kiosk worked in Donkey Kong Country 2. Ultimately, all of the potential for those functions are there. They didn't create a design that completely makes the concept of other characters obsolete and impossible. It's not like there are no places where they could put characters. And I just think that you and I will agree, and maybe some people in their design team would have disagreed, that adding in those characters is not inefficient. It actually is an additive effect on the gameplay. It adds to the world building. It adds to the sense of purpose. Your sense of being on this journey and why you're motivated to be on this journey. All of those things. And Yooka-Laylee proves that concept is not obsolete in a 2D platformer.
Yeah.
And it just really adds to this game.
Yeah, and I wasn't there. I don't know. I I have a feeling that was a lot of Tanabe's influence on retro, and that maybe retro, at least some people in retro would have gone a different way. And hard to say, but you're absolutely right about the lines blurring at Nintendo. And you're actually getting this younger generation who are influenced by Rare's games. I mean, we can see that with things like Odyssey, how much was taken from Banjo-Kazooie and fed back into that. We would have never seen that a decade ago or 15 years ago on Nintendo. And it's kind of a shame that the retro games thus far have not been a part of that evolution of Nintendo's way of thinking, and it's been kind of more old school and guarded in that way. But it's fine. It is what it is. Impossible Lair, though, what it does is it finds room for all of these characters from the original Yooka-Laylee and some new characters, but it's really few and far between as far as new characters go. You got Queen Phoebe, who is obviously this major new character in the Yooka-Laylee world. But besides that, there's not a whole lot. There's new baddies, like new drones that you fight. And then there's the battalion guards. But besides a little tiny 1 or 2 sentence biography, you know, you're not going to get a whole lot of depth there. But, oh yeah, I should say, Jeff and I have been gushing about the game. To be quite transparent, we are both Bs in the game. Whoops.
Yeah. I feel like anyone who thinks that's some kind of conflict of interest, well, at least on my part, I mean, for you, it might be a conflict of interest because they just put your B in there. They put my B in there because I won a contest because I was interested in their game. Yeah. They didn't buy my interest in the game. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I put in a lot of work in that contest.
So I am the one who's more like compromised here, but not Jeff. So just dismiss everything I say, but believe what Jeff has to say. You can trust that man.
That's always been true. But anyway, unfortunately, we don't get to talk about my B's level because it's not in this section of the game.
We don't get to talk about my B's level because it's not in this section of the game.
I want to say that even before I knew, when I beat a level and at the end you get the B, and then that B, it popped up and it was my B.
Yeah.
Even before my B popped up and I didn't know he was going to, I was already believing that that was my favorite level in the whole game. And then it ended and I got my B. And I was like, well, this is just too perfect. But we're not going to talk about that level.
No, we're not.
We should talk about some of the other levels, though. The earlier levels.
We should. Can I just say one thing quick? Since we are in deep spoiler territory for this first part of the game here. When we talk about repurposing the characters, and they make them all fit. That's the brilliant part. Like, Dr. Puzz does something to influence the state change of Chapter 3, and it's so stupid. It is like the dumbest fucking thing, and it's brilliant, and it's hilarious, and it's just the funniest visual of what happens, which we'll get into. But it's like, okay, here's this like wacky inventor who's full of all these mishaps. So why don't we have her be responsible for the state change of one of these chapters? And it's a bad thing. And it's perfect. It not only further solidifies this character who was once thought of as just a mumbo-jumbo XP, but it also serves the function of influencing the level. Is not just there for window dressing. And we also learn more about her as well, because after she fucks that up, she goes back into her new makeshift lab, which is in a piece of the Batship Crazy she's moved into. Also, Royston is in tow the whole time, so Royston does appear in the game. And you talk to her and you find out a major revelation about her character, which this is a big spoiler, so if you don't want to hear it, tune out now. Just skip ahead like 2 minutes or so, just to be safe. But so we debated, like, Dr. Puzz, she has a human head, and that's very weird for characters, for any like rare characters in this universe. Like, in the Donkey Kong universe, but then in the Platonic side of the Platonic universe, which we consider part of the Donkey Kong universe. And I think this game does a lot to actually solidify that, weirdly enough, that this is part of the Donkey Kong universe. The explicit references it makes, and maybe veiled references too, that it's like, oh yeah, this definitely takes place in the same world as Donkey Kong. Fuck it. What's Nintendo gonna do? But it's weird that you have a human character. Like, you might have had Humba Wamba, Gruntilda arguably, but she's a cartoon witch. You had Melanie, the fruit lady from the end of Banjo-Kazooie, but you don't really see many humans, right? So Dr. Puzz was always a weird design. She's a human who got her genetics spliced with an octopus. That's very bizarre. Why would they do that? Well, you find out that she reveals in dialogue once you find her back in the Batship Crazy that no, she's an octopus who accidentally spliced human genetics into herself, and it's
my favorite.
Yeah,
it's an unassuming spider is walking down the street and then gets bitten by a radioactive human. And that's what Spider-Man that's the scenario that we're playing with here, and I love it.
That's how Kevin Feige was going to explain what happened to Tom Holland if they couldn't make a deal with Sony. They were going to say, oh, it turns out he was actually a spider who was bitten by a radioactive human, so we had to get rid of him. Like, they would have had Bucky put him down. Just, that didn't work out. Sorry about that, everyone. He's dead now. So yeah, it's just, it's such a, and like, then they have like fun dialogue where like Laylee's like, I called it Yuka, you owe me, whatever. Like they made a bet about like whether she was a human with an octopus body or an octopus with a human head. And so she can't she can't live in the ocean anymore because she screwed up her genes, and that's why she has to wear the fishbowl. And actually, she might have met Royston in the ocean when she was still an octopus. And I don't know, that's just conjecture on my part. But yeah, brilliant stuff like that. And I really feel as a whole like the characters of the Yooka-Laylee corner of the universe, of the Platonic universe, they all feel so much more enjoyable to me now. Like, there was always this emotional distance I had with them. I really liked the original Yooka-Laylee, and I liked a lot of the characters, but I never really felt like I connected with them. Like, even Yuka and Laylee, they felt a little distant in the same way like maybe Conker feels distant to me. Like, I like Conker, but I don't like him. Like, I wouldn't want to be his friend, and I kind of like think he's a shitty person and just kind of fuck that guy. And not to that extent with Yuka and Laylee in the original game, but in this game I'm like, I really like them. Even Laylee isn't like such just a heinous cynic giver of insults, which, I realize that was what Kazooie is, but I feel like Laylee, just by virtue of her dialogue in this game, but also fleeing in terror whenever she gets hit, makes her a lot more likable as a protagonist, or as a co-protagonist, than she was initially. Like, I feel like she's endearing now.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, Yuka, I felt was kind of wooden. I don't know, there wasn't much to Yuka's personality as the straight man in the first game.
Okay, so what if we had Banjo, but he wasn't a dumb redneck? What if he just what if he was just a guy? What, just a guy?
He's just a guy. He's just a man. He's not even been bitten by anything radioactive. Just a regular guy. He never gets the girl. No, this game, I feel like their dialogue back and forth, their reaction to things that happen, it's all just fleshes them out in a way that I didn't. And you kind of mentioned earlier, it's going to completely repaint the original Yooka-Laylee. I can say that this is does a better job with the characters than the first one does. But really, it makes both of them better because I'll go back and it will color my perceptions of those characters and make them even better in the first game. So it's just like a totally additive, 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. So it's great.
Yeah, it's like how the original Donkey Kong Country made me realize that actually Mario was the terrible villain the whole time, and that and also Cranky's a terrible person. Really, everybody was terrible in the original Donkey Kong arcade game.
Pauline evaded taxes.
Yeah, and then that's why she won't release her tax returns as mayor of New Donk City.
Yeah, it's crazy how the rich can just get off with a slap on the wrist, and now they're mayor of a whole city. Anyway, okay, we got 8 levels to look at. I want to know what your favorites are, what your favorite state changes are, because we've really not talked a lot about the idea of state changes, but there's a couple really good ones here.
Fucking state changes, man. And yes, the expletive was essential there. The what I love about state changes, and state changes are the secondary version of the level, and sometimes it's just the same level, like the same layout with a new twist. Sometimes it's just a completely separate level entirely, like it takes place within the same sphere, the same like area, but it's just a completely new section. It varies, and it's different each time, and it always varies because something on the overworld messes with the book, messes with that chapter, and it directly influences the world within. So it can be something as simple as, it's now flooded in this area, so it's wet, and now there's a flood in that area of the Grand Tome, that chapter. Or it can be something more like convoluted, we're going to have this cooking pot spill its sticky honey mixture. It's basically the same thing, but it's just weirder to talk about.
It is, but you know what's crazy about that? This is a game about bees.
Yeah.
And the only level that has a sticky honey theme to it is nothing to do with bees making it that way. It's a cooking pot that made a honey stew and spilled the honey onto the level. They very easily could have had a honey sticky level by just having bees, because bees are the whole game are bees. It's called the Royal Stingdom. And yet the one time they make a level covered in sticky honey, it has nothing to do with the bees. I love it.
I could go for a good honey stew right now. Honey stew also sounds like a character in like a 70s movie.
It's a Bond girl, right? It's very, I don't know.
Or maybe like a movie like Pam Grier would have starred in, or like Honey Stew. It's also my pornographic name, Jeff. If you ever want to search me,
I don't.
That's what I perform under. Anyway, so and Potty Mouth was the cooking pot. I should point out Potty Mouth from the original Yooka-Laylee is back, and you have to get a stew going in him.
Getting to the levels themselves, getting to the chapters of the tomes, is really all about there's a bit of puzzle solving to progress on the overworld, but a lot of it is just like getting enough coins to get through the next paywall. And once you've paid off that paywall, you're in an area that has the tomes in it. But getting the state change, which is a whole extra level, that's half of the levels in the game are the state changes to the other half. Those are almost all of them require some kind of puzzle solving. So if you want, you can get into an area and you've got a couple levels you can get access to, but if you want to get access to all the levels, which means the state changes, you've got to solve a puzzle for each one, and it's great. And some of them are, a couple of them are a little repetitive, like, what if we put water on this level? Let's do that a bunch of times. what that does to the level is different every time. But the puzzle on the overworld is kind of similar, like just get water onto this tome. Other ones are completely unique and varied and nothing like any other state change. And so it's such a creative, it adds a ton of different things where they came up with a really creative way to take a theme of a level and use it in a way different way. And then the crazy part about that is when they reuse the same level geometry, which not all of them do that. But when they do, but it's done in such a completely different way, like the way you traverse the level, what that means is they had to go and design that geometry to work really well for 2 levels.
Yeah,
and that's like so well designed.
It's frustrating at times too. Not frustrating, it's frustrating in a good way, because there'll be times when you cannot reach, say, a door, and it's just on a ledge that's just out of reach, and you're like, should I waste my time trying to figure out if there's a way to get up there now, or should I just assume that's for the state change? And you don't know, but it creates this, like, I love, like, trying and failing to get up somewhere in this game, because it takes me back to when I just didn't know, when it's very rewarding in your own failure, because it's fun to try again and just fall flat on your face, but also just be confident that eventually you'll find a way to get up there, even if it's in the eventual state change.
Yeah, those hidden twit coins are one of my favorite parts about them, is that they're numbered.
Yes.
There's 5 coins in a level, but they have a number on them. So when you get a coin and it says number 2 on it, you immediately know, okay, I have passed where the part of the level that has coin number 1 in it. So I can repeat the level, and I've narrowed down where in the level I need to look for it. I know exactly, you can narrow down where every coin is that way. And you know when you've missed one, you know how many you've missed, and because they numbered them. And that's just such a, like, amazing touch that takes it from, maybe it had the potential to be frustrating. But because you can narrow it down, it's very not frustrating most of the time.
Yeah. And one more thing on the state changes. I love that they use the in-universe lore of the Grand Tomes and the chapters being pulled from the Grand Tomes, and then how the outside world can influence the Grand Tomes. We know, like, the Grand Tomes have some influence on the outside world because the environment around the Grand Tome starts to get influenced by it, as we saw in the original Yooka-Laylee. But here we see, if there's a strong enough force in the outside world, that can also influence the Grand Tome within. And it's just such a clever way of using your story elements to influence gameplay and build on each other. It's just so, everything about this game is so harmonious. And it really is just a talented team, just, like, firing on all cylinders. They're at the top of their game making this game. And it's kind of remarkable to see, like, all these things that we really like, Jeff, that made us fans of Rare or fans of Donkey Kong Country, or seeing all of that work in tandem with that style of gameplay that we really like. And I've never seen it works as well together as I have in this game. And I really think the state changes and the overworld drive that home.
Yeah, definitely. One of the ones in this part of the game, in level 5, Gasping Glade, the tome itself is in a dry riverbed. That the riverbed, you can see it, at a higher elevation off to the right. And so you play that level, but you already know just by the environmental clues of like the area, I bet I could get water flowing to that area. And then if you head in that direction where the water is going to flow from, you're going to find a cave with a series of puzzles and, like a whole little dungeon to solve these puzzles that will cause the water to flow. And then once the water's flowing, it flows into the level and you get a whole new level to play. But that kind of, like the way the design of the game, guides you towards solving the puzzles and, it's really well implemented. Everything, it just seems like, you're never completely lost. You can kind of use context clues to figure out, well, what needs to happen to change this level. This level's gonna, obviously, if this level's sitting in front of a big, giant, googly-eyed fan, then probably I'm going to find a way to turn on the fan and blow the wind, and that's what's going to give me a different version of that level. Now the level will be windy. But you just have the context clues of that setup. Now I know what I have to do. I don't know how to do it, but I know I have to somehow get that fan blade blowing. And in the game, it's just everything. All the puzzles, it's so well put together. Everything is given the right amount of context for you to be able to solve it. And it's just excellent.
Yeah, this is actually, we keep saying how this evolves on Donkey Kong Country. This also evolves on Grunny's Revenge and Conqueror's Pocket Tales. Like, this is the best version of those games GBA. As well. Yeah, Saberwolf, yeah. But the whole top-down legacy of the handheld team at Rare, Gary Richards, who we briefly accosted at E3.
We stalked him, and we did a great job of it.
But it's amazing how this is also the best version of those games as well. Like, this is where they left off with them, and
it definitely feels like right from the get-go they had a vision for how the pieces of the game were going to fit together, and then they executed that perfectly. Whereas maybe with the first game, because it rose out of a Kickstarter where they had to come up with some ideas, and they were like, okay, well, maybe one of the bonuses that we do minecart levels, and it's not necessarily all coming from a centralized vision for the design. Like, maybe there's some parts of that game that feel hodgepodged together. This game never feels like that to me. Not for a moment. Everything feels very deliberately thought out.
Yes.
And it's just executed so well.
It proves that Platonic can make an exquisitely designed game. And I think a lot of people, the faults with the original Yooka-Laylee, there's a lot of doubt. Like, oh, well, can they really do that? Yeah, they can. And oh my God, this is a masterpiece. Like, I can't express enough how good this is and how you need to try it, because the words we're saying are not doing it justice. We're just idiots with microphones. That's all we are. You need to pick this up and try it for yourself. So one interesting thing, because we're talking about the chapters now, the 8 chapters that we are allowed to talk about in this episode. And I don't even know if we're going to go through them like in a linear fashion, like chapter 1, Capital Causeway, if we're going to do the John Lovitz thing. Or we could do a TT voice if you prefer. That's always fun.
Nah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know if that's the best way to discuss this. But one interesting thing about the levels of this game, and that I think is kind of striking a lot of people as they play, is, with Donkey Kong Country, you would have these archetypes and ecosystems, and it would depend on like what kind of Donkey Kong Country game it is, because in the Rare games they would mix up the archetypes. Even like you would have the world like theme, like, oh, okay, so we're gonna have a temperate forest, but we'll still sneak in, say, a jungle stage here,
or
an underwater
level
stage. And we have the snow world, but here's still a treetop village. We're just going to change the coloring slightly to make it look colder. And then the retro games really divided it more. So you would never have a savanna stage in, say, the fruit factory world. But you would have that very like diverse lineup of, this is very much like this type of stage, this distinct ecosystem. Oh, here is a factory, here is a cave, etc. The archetypes of Impossible Lairs chapters, they're all part of the same grand tome, and I think there's more thematic consistency between them. It's never so much, this is a cavern, or this is a town, or this is a forest. There's a lot more blending of elements here, so it's more just this is a world that exists. This Grand Tome is a living, breathing place, so you're never going to get that really stark difference between them that you maybe got in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you didn't tell me that you were going to talk about this, so I didn't know to prepare, but I did anyway. I actually wrote down every level in the game, like last week, and wrote down what archetypes were contained within that level, because they do cross over. They have like, yeah, this is like a castle level, but halfway through it becomes more of a factory level. And then maybe, you know, you'll have a level that is set in a forest, but then it goes into like a mine shaft or cave level. And then it comes back out and it's overlooking this canyon desert. Like it's all 3 in 1 at different parts of the level. They don't feel disconnected or anything. It just feels like one living, breathing ecosystem. And so some people, especially early in the game, before they really get to experience the breadth of different levels they have, I've seen some people complain that the levels felt too samey from level to level because there wasn't a very clear like line in the sand. This is a forest level and nothing else. But the more I played that, after, you know, getting through the first kind of quarter of the game, it doesn't bother me at all. I actually love it because it all feels so interconnected. Which was something that I was worried about. I was worried that they wouldn't feel interconnected because they're all supposed to take place in one Grand Tome, the Royal Stingdom. And I was like, well, why would this one Grand Tome have a bunch of really different environments that aren't really connected to each other? Like a forest, and then a cave, and then a town, and then a factory. Whereas the tomes in the first Yooka-Laylee game were all kind of one location, one environment. And in fact, the way that they executed it, it does feel like everywhere I am, no matter what the archetype of the level is, I feel like I'm in this Royal Stingdom. I'm either in the town, with the windmills, or I'm in the forest that surrounds the town, or a factory also in the town, or whatever. It all feels like one location, but with diverse sub-locations within it.
Yeah, I really like how, like, say, the towns, and you start in one of the towns. The first chapter is Capital Causeway, the capital city of the Royal Stingdom, and I really like how all the architecture, it feels, I don't know, as an ignorant American, landlocked or ocean-locked as I am, but it feels to me like it's kind of like this Dutch influence on everything. Just colorful, but you got the windmills, obviously. There's this like floral element to everything. And of course, because it's a civilization of bees, you've got that aesthetic. Like the light fixtures all have kind of a hive shape, and you get like bee patterns on wallpaper. But it all feels like a real place that feels tangible, but it's just slightly fantastical at the same time, which is always like the best type of rare design, where it feels rooted in something plausible, like I could see this place existing, but it's just a little bit more extreme than our own reality. Yeah.
I was going to say, again, I'm just some I don't know much about the world. I got the feeling that it was almost the architecture of the towns. It felt almost Mediterranean. Maybe it was like, I think
a little bit
like Greece or Sicily or something. I don't know.
And again, you don't know, Jeff, because you're just an ignorant country dog fucker.
Well, no, but yeah. You know what? You got me here where I don't know how to respond to being called a dog fucker, and now it's just on record. Now I'm just stuck with that. So thanks. Tell me, what do you think out of these levels that we get to talk about? Because I've been thinking about this since you invited me on the episode. I'm curious which one stands out the most to you as a level, and then which one stands out the most to you this as a state change of a level.
Okay, well, I think,
or it could be the both, like the package deal, if you want to go with the package deal of the both.
Yeah, it's hard because I like so many of these. Because I was gonna say, well, I feel like Gasping Glade, as you already mentioned, when it's just very dry riverbed, and then it just becomes a robust, almost jungle type atmosphere once you flood
like
it.
a rainforest.
Yeah, and like that was staying out for me as a state change, but then I can't forget about Saw Blade Evade, where it just gets coated in honey and it becomes an homage to the Zinger hives from off of Donkey Kong Country 2. There's that, but then of course I really like Windmill Way when it becomes windy, and then it's sort of like a take on Windy Well almost. But I really like Production Path. That was a very clever state change, because that became almost a Tropical Freeze-esque set piece where you're like running in terror from this giant death bot. I don't know, Jeff. Like
that one is great. I think Production Path is notable for the way that the state change is rooted in the physical presence of the book in the overworld. You enter the book. The book there's literally a wall built that is bifurcating the book, and so you can come in from the left side and you enter the tome and you play the level and you move from left to right, and when you exit the level, you've exited the book on the right side, and now you're on the opposite side of this structure that the book is on.
Yeah,
but now you can access a state change. But now you go from right to left back through the level while being chased by a lightning thing. And that I thought was one of the more clever fusions of the way the book is presented in the overworld and how that impacts how you traverse it in the level itself. But yeah, I think I'm with you. It's hard to pick any favorites out of this group. I think I would go with Sawblade Evade and the state change as a package deal are my favorites, but all of the rest are like in the running.
Yeah, and speaking of archetypes too, I also like how all the factory stages, it's not just like straight. It's very rarely straight up. You are just in a factory. What it is, it's very subtle, but it's capital B and basically intruding upon the world, and this is where he's manufacturing all of his shit. And you've got the Dr. Quack Q on like the saw blades and stuff, and just this very like subtle thing that just tells you this is not natural to this world.
Right.
And but again, it's very rare that you're just in a factory. Usually you'll be like in a more neutral part of the Royal Stingdom, and then you just kind of stumble upon one of his little production plants. And it's all just I think like Production Path might be like one of the only times like it's just you're in a factory. Well, Factory Fright
right.
too, but
Factory Fright, the difference between them is interesting because Factory Fright is so overgrown with rose bushes and vines.
Yeah.
And so that it almost doesn't feel like you're in a factory. Obviously, it very much is a factory. It's got all these like the kind of like what do you call that? Like you go into a room, like a atmospheric chamber that separates another room. They've got those throughout the level, and then they come into play when you flood the level. So when you enter this room, then all the water drains out of it, and then you exit, and now you're out of the water or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's very clearly a factory, but it feels like a very different location than Production Path, which is another factory. Like it's a different kind of factory. And Sawblade Evade has factory feeling to it in terms of the gameplay because it's like moving, spinning saw blades. But the actual like aesthetics of the level are a castle. It doesn't feel like you're in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
You're like a castle within the village.
Can I also just point out too that they actually named the third chapter Wild Web Woods, which there's a classic Donkey Kong Country 2 stage called Web Woods, and I like that they went with the Beatles' White Album approach to take it back to Sir Paul McCartney, where oh no, we have two songs that are both called Honey Pie. We wrote these concurrently. What do? One of us is going to have to change the name of our song. Well, I got it. Let's just call this one Wild Honey Pie. Done. They're both going to be on the album. And so we got
that was
Wild
a really
Web
good state
Woods.
change.
Yeah.
I
so
prefer the state change on Revolution. That was a better state change in my opinion, but
right. Exactly. Definitely done, Jeff. That was the Beatles reference of the episode. Like, that's the winner. Yeah, Wild Web Woods, though, is the aforementioned Dr. Puzz influenced state change, where she just pumps a shit ton of enemies into the stage. And they're the little pesky ones. And forgive me, I have not committed to memory most of these enemy names yet, but they're the little, like, biting critters that chase you. And she just pumps a continual stream of them into the chapter. And why would she do that? And she says, they're just there for the aesthetic. I didn't realize they were actually going to be so vicious. And it's just a stupid sight gag, but every time you have that state change activated on the overworld, you've just got her machine humming along, pumping a continual never-ending stream of these biting little mad creatures into the chapter. It's smart, stupid. The kind of humor I really like, where, oh, that is the dumbest thing, but it's done in a very intellectual way. Bravo. So that's also another memorable stage change. I would say Wild Web Woods, I think, was the first time I really, like, stood up and noticed the level environment. And maybe it's because it's a more natural setting. It's more removed from the residential areas of the Royal Stingdom or Capital B's infrastructure. It's just you're out in the nature of the Royal Stingdom. Of course, that's always going to speak to me first and foremost. So that's the first chapter where I was like, oh man, this game is gorgeous. But honestly, like, it's really hard to parse the mountains because of the way they're all blended in their archetypes. It's hard to really, like, sit back and say, like, that was a memorable chapter because of that environment, and I distinctly remember that. They kind of all blend together, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's really weird.
It is weird because they have unique concepts. They all have really unique music. The music is amazing. We didn't talk about that, but and in spite of those distinctions, yeah, it is sometimes hard to remember, like, which one was which. Now that I've kind of got all the collectibles, I know I need to work on doing the Impossible Lair, but I keep putting it off because every time I boot up the game, I just want to replay levels. I just go back and play levels just for fun. Now that I've got every coin, every collectible, whatever. It's crazy. I think Gasping Glade, I forgot to mention, I loved not just the aesthetic change of, like, going from this dried out canyon to a rainforest, but the rainforest version of the level is like a zip lining down vines level. It's a completely different. Even though it's based in the same spot, it's pretty much not the same level at all. There's nothing that it really shares in common at that point.
No, and that's, I think, what's so exciting about the state changes. It's because you don't know what you're actually going to get when you alter it. It could be a completely different level, or it could just be a new, like, something that changes in a level you already played, but in a way that just makes it a completely different experience at the same time. It's so varied, and it's never just paint by numbers. It really does, like, make you sit back a bit and kind of gape your mouth in awe over how much thought they put into this game. It was never just, okay, we've got the concept, let's crank out some levels and ship it. Like, they put a lot of thinking into this. And it's like, I think it's one of the most creatively designed 2D platformers I've ever played. And I know, like, I get a lot of shit because I obviously don't play a whole lot outside of the DKU just because of, time management. I don't have time to, but...
Well, I'll say it because they can't trust you because you're paid for it. I play more games than Hyle does, and I would say this game is a hallmark of tight, well thought out game design. It's something I would use as an example. Like if I was trying to teach myself or teach somebody else. This is quite possibly the most well-rounded, like well thought out, everything feeds into everything, everything was designed with a purpose kind of design I've seen in a 2D platformer in a very, very long time.
I hold up Donkey Kong Country 2 as my favorite 2D platformer, but one of my favorite Mario games is Super Mario World, and when we interviewed Gavin Price, he said, obviously there's a lot of Super Mario World influence into this, and I would say, like, just based on what we said, I think maybe one of the only 2D platformers that comes as close to what this does is Super Mario World. Just the way everything is kind of linked together with the map screen and the secret exits. And we didn't even talk about secret exits yet. But I feel like this does it so much more in a tight package. Because Super Mario World, and it always felt like it had vague ideas about what it was doing with like the hidden exits and stuff, and the branching paths, and here's a secret stage over here that you can only get by going out this door, and now we're gonna have Star Road.
What those color switches, the P switches, right? That's what they are. That you find on the overworld, and then they add in more blocks in the levels. From Super Mario World. Yeah. That is almost kind of a state change kind of thing. Like, find this secret on the overworld, it changes what you can do in the level. It's interesting. I think that you can definitely see how the design can be influenced by that.
Yeah. But it marries a lot of the innovative qualities of Super Mario World that haven't been replicated yet. It marries that with that like very delightful Donkey Kong Country style of game design and philosophy, and it just creates this just wholly appealing package that I am just blown away. I figured I was going to like this game. This was the game walking out of E3 this year. This was the game I was looking forward to the most, and I didn't know I was going to like it this much. I didn't realize it was going to be this brilliant, and I don't have anything else to say really, except about the chapters. Except, I'm just gonna find new ways to complement the game, and that gets kind of old. So,
you're gonna do it on all the other episodes too. So
that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah. So hopefully the game starts getting bad, so I have something new to talk about. I do want to bring up Twit coins real quick, because I've seen some debates about whether the Twit coins are too difficult to find. Some people are complaining about that. And
I kind of think, if I can provide a little more context.
Sure.
One of the main complaints I've seen is that not so much, some of them are really difficult and some people have complained about that, but it's more so that how requisite they are, that they're not superfluous extras that you can ignore. Because if you ignore them entirely, then you won't be able to progress on the map screen, towards the paywalls. And I will admit that is very different from any of the past Donkey Kong Country games, where, yes, if you want to get to the Lost World, you're going to have to find those bonus coins from bonus barrels if you want to do all the stuff, the post-game, the Lost World. But if you want to play the game where you just run through levels and you like to hop and bop and you like to get momentum going and you don't want to stop, obviously Donkey Kong Country 2 is full of really well-hidden secrets, and so is Tropical Freeze, but you have an option to kind of ignore them if you just want to speed through. And this game sort of limits that option because it does require you to find those. So I will admit, I've seen some people complain about that. I think it comes down to personal taste, though.
Yeah, yeah. I love exploring and I love like finding secrets, so it doesn't bother me. It's right up my alley, right up my asshole, as you might say.
I think
You
that
might
if you're
say
going to, I mean, obviously the originals were known for having secrets hidden in places. That's like
Yeah.
a defining characteristic. And Retro made that a core design of their games as well. You have all kinds of hidden secrets. But I think that if you're going to have a game that's known for having hidden secrets and you're going to build the levels around those, they should be meaningful and impactful to the gameplay. And that's what the Twit
Sure.
coins are. In a way that bonus coins weren't, in a way that definitely the puzzle pieces weren't from Retro's games. And I think some people are going to prefer it that way. Maybe there's going to be players that just don't want to explore and they want to have the option to ignore it. I, as a guy who am, even if it's completely meaningless, I'm going to scour levels as I go for secrets. So to give them meaning really improves the game for me. But I think, like I said, that just comes down to your playstyle and your preference. It's a personal preference thing, and that is one of the areas that it does diverge from the Donkey Kong Country games. It is very heavily focused on those hidden secrets, and they're not optional.
And you don't even need to collect all the Twit coins if you don't want. The Twit coins, if you collect them all, you do get a reward. But as far as the paywalls go, you definitely don't need all of them. So
you need like half.
Yeah, and it would be very hard, I would think, to avoid all the Twit coins. Like, you're gonna be stumbling across them, so even if you're not actively looking for them. So,
yeah,
I think it's an overblown complaint, and I think people also might get too hung up on it. Like, if, I haven't found all the Twit coins, I need to replay the stage again and again until I find them all. And that's how I play, but I love that kind of thing. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can, keep going and you can come back later. It's not imperative that you know.
That's what I did. I was averaging maybe 3 coins a level, and then I never stopped at a paywall where I didn't have to pay or didn't have enough. And then I just went back at the end of the game and got them, so.
Yeah, it's, I would usually get about 4 out of 5, and I would always miss one, and there would always be one that would give me trouble. Although, this is going to be beyond what we're talking about now, but the more recent chapters later in the game that I'm currently at, I'm just starting to. I think I'm a lot better at figuring out the game's logic because I'm getting all the Twit coins now first go around. So.
Same thing happened to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's getting easier. I'm just
people should not hang up on it too early because you're not going to get stuck at a paywall that you can't afford. You should push along long enough at least that you're like really getting a handle on the game's mechanics and the way it hides things and all that stuff. But we've got like phone calls, don't we? Do we have phone calls?
People were calling in like just minutes before we were slated to record. So that's ignoring the 45 minutes of technical difficulties we had. So yeah, let's get through these calls. A lot of people wanted to talk about the game, so we're going to let them talk about the game.
Hey guys, it's Banjo Kaboom here, talking about Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. It's a little early for me, but whatever. Yeah, so this game is awesome, which I'm sure you guys already know. This is the second most exciting thing to happen on October 8th, first being finding out the gender of our baby, which is going to be a girl. That's exciting. Definitely naming her Laylee, maybe, probably not, depending on how my wife feels. But yeah, so up through the third paywall, there's 2 chapters already that I really, really, really enjoyed playing. I'm sure you guys are going to be talking about these anyways. But I will call them out as Gasting Glade, the Grown, what do you call it? The new state of Gasting Glade, and both versions of Production Path. But Production Path Panic was a lot of fun to play. Those are the two most memorable ones so far that I've played, and I'm only a little bit past the third paywall. So, yeah, that's pretty fun. On top of that, I love that the game is definitely like DKC hard. Like, there's a lot of good challenges in the game. But it never feels like it's too frustrating, just like DKC did. And on top of that, if you ever do feel frustrated, you can just kind of sit back and go into the overworld and explore and do the puzzles that are in there, which I found the overworld to be extremely enjoyable. I'm loving all the little nods and stuff that you're finding here and there. I also love the little details, like the animation when Yuka sucks in like a fruit and he's holding something in his mouth. If you jump or do any kind of movement, you can hear that his voice is muffled, which is awesome. The smallest little thing, but it's awesome. Yeah, the only question that I really had was, Hyle, I tweeted this at you, but I don't think you responded to me, so I'll ask it again. What are the implications of the one book being inside of this grand tome? Does that mean that Yuka and Laylee are actually just storybook characters, including the one book? Or is this just some kind of weird, like, interdimensional literature, lobotomy, some shit? I don't know, I can't think of another L word. Yeah, so let me know what your thoughts, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think about this awesome game. Take it easy, guys.
Well, thank you for the call, Banjo Kaboom, and I guess congratulations on successfully spreading your seed. Is that what people say?
You know, I'm going to say it. Congratulations. I won't even say I guess. And also, we're probably going to need an update on whether or not the baby is named Laylee, because that's kind of, you know, that's important for your character arc. We need that. We need that detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Also,
it's a good way to get free stuff. I feel like if you call Platonic and say I named my baby Laylee, you don't think they're going to send a gift basket of some goodies? I think they would.
Oh, they would definitely send a basket. Also, you need to train your baby to respond to bells. That's what I would do. That would make some good social media content, which I feel like is the primary reason you wanted to have a baby, right? For the likes. No, congratulations. Seriously, I won't even say I guess this time. As far as your
that's better.
Yeah, I can be human. I have feelings. I can be empathetic, and I'm learning. I'm just
so there's a question there, though.
What was the question again?
Something about the one book being inside of a grand tome. I feel like that's not true, right?
I
premise
would feel
of the
like
question,
that. Right? Because the grand tome was in Shipwreck Creek. In this,
yeah, the one book was in Shipwreck Creek on the overworld, which does not take place inside the Royal Stingdom tome. So I don't think the premise of the question was, you're wasting our time. We're happy about the baby, but the question is just, we got to blow through these. This is just, come on, do the research, people. Holy shit, there's like 6 calls here. Well,
76 calls.
Do you have any more to say about the question that wasn't even real?
No, I don't. I was just going to make more awkward small talk about the baby and how I can't behave like a human being.
Well, I mean, you gotta put it in one of those little onesies with a big letter J on it, so everyone knows that it's your offspring. And then when it gets older, it will wear your tie, obviously. It will get rid of the onesie.
You could do that, or you could put it in a blue onesie and have a surfing mechanic arbitrarily give it to one of its relations to babysit and take on a very dangerous adventure to rescue her boyfriend and his mentor, who are now the brains of a cyborg, a crocodile king man.
Good job.
You could do that, too. Yeah.
We got the reference in, so.
That was a good reference. Thank you for having a baby so we can make that reference.
Love you.
Love you. Love you, Banter Kaboom.
I don't know.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Let's take another call and see how I can screw that up.
Hey everybody, this is Josh. Wanted to call to talk a little bit about Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I have been loving it recently. I've got the digital version and the physical version of it for Switch. Just to keep this as short as I can, if you love Donkey Kong Country, of course, especially the Super Nintendo iterations of it, I highly recommend this one. It feels like kind of a mix between that and the Retro Studios games. But yeah, my thoughts from trying to stick to the first 8 chapters is quite awesome. I just got the last B in the game right before I made this call, and I love it. I haven't attacked the Impossible Lair fully yet, but the soundtrack, everything about it's beautiful. Everything I could have asked for from what I have seen so far. And that is about it. I also recommend checking out the soundtrack. Keep an eye out for my daughter's B, Lil B, and, but anyway, I guess that is it. You all have a good day.
Oh, thank you for the call. And see, he already has a daughter that was born and was made a bee, so I don't have to be super awkward about congratulating him.
You know, Banjo Kaboom, no offense on your new daughter, but she's done nothing of note. What do you want us to praise? There's nothing to praise yet. She needs to get out and win a contest.
Become a bee, right?
So, and Josh here on the call is kind of like our father-in-law, because we're all bees together with, not like father-in-law in a weird way, like an uncle, I guess.
Uncle-in-law?
A step, because we are all parts of the, you and I have a bee. We're in the Beetalion Guard, so.
Wait, you know how some people pronounce on as aunt, like my aunt Karen.
Yeah,
right?
I do that.
So,
yeah.
So shouldn't an uncle then be like your bee?
Do you think that bees are the male version of ants?
I don't know how anything works.
That's not how bugs work.
I don't know how anything works, Jeff. I'm just a weirdo man in his 30s sitting here at 11 p.m. at night, nearly.
Look, ants live in dirt. Bees live in paper houses full of honey. They're not the same.
Look, all I know from the Marvel movies is that Tom Holland was a spider boy who got bitten by a radioactive human, and then Paul Rudd is an Ant-Man, and he hangs out with Kate from Lost, who was a wasp woman. And so, yeah, I think ants are the other version of bees. What do you want from me?
I don't know. You know what kind of superhero eats all of those animals, all those insects? Would be a bat. A Batman.
Yes.
So Batman's naturally, he would eat the Wasp, and he would eat Spider-Man, and he would eat Ant-Man, because he is a bat. Well, he's not a fruit bat either. He's a regular bat.
Yeah. It's a shame there is no Batman, though. That character has not been invented yet. It is a shame.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like
pretty good idea I came up with, though.
One of you out there can just run with that. We gave you that idea, and I feel like you can run and make merchandise. And
you could win a contest?
Yeah. Well, you could sell movie scripts and do all sorts of things with this Batman, and luckily nobody would sue you because that character has not been invented yet. So have fun with that.
No.
Tell them DK Vine sent you. And speaking of the soundtrack, as Josh mentioned, I believe it is going to be available on Bandcamp.
Yeah. Just one time. It's one time at Bandcamp.
Should be out by the time you hear this episode. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you for the call. And you ready for the next one, Jeff?
Oh boy, am I ever.
Hello there, Hyle and Jeff. My name is Jared, the Rusty Bucket Garrison. This is my first time calling, first time caller, long time listener. And I just wanted to call and talk about Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. And I gotta say, this really is my game of the year. I know I'm a biased Donkey Kong fan, but this game is just everything I could want out of a video game. It's amazing. Obviously, it's got the fast-paced 2D platforming levels that really push your skill to the limit. I love the Zelda-style overworld with exploration and secret discovering. I love how Yuka can hold projectiles while climbing and swimming and, still doing all the normal attacks. And I just think, I hope that the future Donkey Kong Country game is set up like this. This is a great platformer. And I guess my last question is, since we're all talking about lore and stuff, what do you think the implications of the Infinity Ink mean for the rest of the Donkey Kong universe? Because I think that they have some kind of weird control over reality. So, anyway, it's great talking to you guys. I can't wait to hear the whole episode of the Kongversation, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you for the call, Rusty. And congratulations on the daughter.
Wait, he has a daughter too? I missed that part. Oh, you know what? Just in case, for any future daughters. I see.
Or any past daughters that we may have missed. First-time caller, so, we can congratulate him on the birth of any daughters or the conception of any daughters. So, I'm trying to be a better person, Jeff, and I'm trying to be better at congratulating people for children. So, congratulations, Rusty Bucket. Can I call you Rusty Bucket? Because I like to be able to call people Rusty Bucket.
It's a folksy name. I like to call anybody Rusty. Rusty Bucket. It rolls off the tongue pretty well for a name.
It does. Unlike rust, which really just doesn't taste good on your tongue. Have you ever licked rust, Jeff?
No. Why? No. I imagine it's kind of, I did like to lick batteries though. Little, just not like not one that would hurt me, but like a little one, like a AA battery, D battery. You put the bit on your tongue and it kind of, or like a watch battery. Those ones are easy. You put them on the tongue and you get that kind of, We didn't have a lot of toys growing up, Hyle.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend what Jeff just said about the battery consumption. We're not consuming the batteries, but really just...
Hyle's asking me about licking rust, and now he's going to condemn me about the batteries. Just don't do anything you hear on this show. Don't do it.
I don't recommend licking rust either. I don't do it, because I imagine it would taste terrible. Like, one time I opened a package that was sent to me, and it had been left out in the rain, and so the cardboard was covered in water, and so I cut open the tape, and when I opened the box, some of that water that had absorbed partially into the cardboard flew into my mouth, and I could taste cardboard juice. And Jeff, I don't know if you ever juiced a cardboard, but it's not a pleasant experience. You don't want to put that in your blender, Jeff. You don't want to make a cardboard smoothie, because I imagine it tastes a lot like rust, is my point.
Do you remember Rosie the robot from off of the Jetsons?
Of course.
Cartoon? Yeah, I imagine that if you were to go down on Rosie the robot, that would taste rusty. Yeah?
Yeah, well, it depends on whether or not she's rusted down there. And,
This isn't the first time I've thought of it, all right? No, I've already figured out what I think it tastes like.
Look, if I'm honest, I've written many grand tomes of Jetsons erotica, and I'm sure in one of the 400 some odd chapters, state changes included, I went into it. So I'll have to dig those up. I keep them in a locked bank vault. And I'll have to go down to the old bank, because I surely don't have any money, but I keep my Jetsons erotica in there. And that's where you have sex with Astro, being the country dog fucker that you are.
What a good callback. I'm glad that dog fucker is the recurring joke of this episode. Really happy with that bit there. There was a question in that call, though.
Oh,
and
shit.
We didn't address it yet. The question was the implications of the Infinity Ink on the rest of the DKU, and I think I have a thought on that.
Okay, what is your thinking?
Timber's Island in Diddy Kong Racing has a genie that brings all the animals into sentience, and that spreads throughout the DKU. It's just some magical creature who's completely changed life for the islands in the Rare Archipelago. Log, the Lord of Games from Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, is some sort of meta-god who claims he creates all video games, but at the very least he creates some video games and has the ability to bend the reality of our game characters that they live in at his will. Now we have Infinity Inc., which we know from the game can rewrite reality and change the landscape and basically change reality. My point is that this isn't new for the DKU to have some kind of like god level, or at least meta god level, force in this DKU, and it makes me think of the movie Men in Black when Kay, which is played by Tommy Lee Jones, says there's always an Archelian battlecruiser or a Carillion death ray or an intergalactic plague that is about to wipe out all life on this miserable planet. The only way that people get on with their happy lives is that they don't know about it. And what that means for the DKU is that nobody else knows about the Infinity Inc. On Donkey Kong Island, so they just don't care. They're fine. They're happy.
Yes. And also, did you know that Infinity Inc. is a superhero team in the DCU? They are the children of the Justice Society of America.
I didn't know. Now I know. Thanks for that no. I can add that to my no bank.
I would just like to say also to the Justice Society of America, congratulations on your daughters.
The Men in Black aren't allowed daughters. They're pretty much just stuck in the organization. They don't marry. Kind of like Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably why they're so grumpy and they become Tommy Lee Jones. All right. He doesn't sanction buffoonery, that Tommy Lee Jones. Did you know that?
He doesn't sanction buffoonery? Yeah, I knew that. That's kind of a character trait. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's
it's
take
my
our next
favorite
call.
my favorite member of the Brothers Bear.
Buffoonery Bear?
Yeah. Let's take the call.
All right. Hopefully there's not much buffoonery in this call. Otherwise, Tommy Lee Jones will definitely stop listening to this podcast.
Hi, this is Keith Stack. I was wondering, do chameleons have ears?
Nothing but buffoonery, Keith. Keith? All right. Well, look. Yes, they don't. They don't. Look, chameleons do not have an outer ear appendage. They have microscopic holes in the sides of their heads. So they're not deaf, but they are hard of hearing. They detect sound frequencies instead of just straight up hearing. So think about that next time Yooka responds to Laylee or any other character and about how he's actually perceiving the sounds. Interesting. It'll change the way you play the game. I guarantee that much.
Also, chameleons can see in both visible and ultraviolet light, which I think that means that if Laylee farts, Yooka can see it before he smells it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jeff. And also, to that I say, Keith, congratulations on the daughter. Getting good
Next
at
call.
This.
You're good. We're really killing it now.
Murdering it. We're spree killers.
Hey guys, it's me, Nos Jacob73 on Twitter, and the Impossible Lair. I'm sure I'm just reiterating a million things everyone has said, but it feels fantastic. The music's great. It looks beautiful. I got it on my Switch day one, and I've just been playing it nonstop. It's all I think about. It's all I want to do, and I'm legit begrudging and upset when I have to turn it off. I feel like a kid again back in middle school or elementary school, and you have to do your homework or you have to go to bed for school the next day. In my case, work. But I'm loving it. I'm obsessed with the game. It truly, truly, truly is awesome. I'm so happy to see Playtonic put out another game, and one that's just reviewing so well. I hope more and more people are picking this up. I'd like to see it higher on the Nintendo eShop, and so I've been a little disappointed that it's not higher yet. I don't think it's in the top 30, so it needs to do better because Playtonic deserves it. It's really wonderful. Just one question, I guess. I mean, I know Playtonic's working on their own stuff, and they want to continue to build that universe. But a curious question I have is, I mean, they have clearly shown they still got what it takes to make DKC games. Do you think that Nintendo would ever consider Playtonic to revisit the Donkey Kong Country series for them and hire them to do that? Is it something you could see happening one day? And is it something you want to see happen one day? I, for one, would love to see them get their hands back on Donkey Kong Country and see what fun they can do with the Kongs and the Kremlings once again. Thanks, guys. If you want me to listen, talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for the call. And real quick, a lot of people are voicing concerns that the game is not tracking higher in the eShop, or that it's not in the top 30 or whatever. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the game, the reviews are going to raise its profile, and so the thing is that might take time because people didn't have it on their radar until the reviews really hit. I think that really put it on a lot of people's radar, and so maybe people who hadn't planned to buy it are now planning to buy it. They just haven't yet, or it's in a kind of a busy part of the Nintendo release schedule. They had Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion coming up, Fire Emblem Three Houses, all this. And then there was this game about a goose. I think you've probably heard of it. And it's just all the rage. So, there's a lot of competition. I think that results will speak for themselves. The game is good. The game is pretty unanimously recognized as good by the critical media. And that is going to translate to sales throughout the next, through the holiday season. They've got some time. Obviously, it would have been great if it was just like a chart topper. I don't think anyone can predict when that's going to happen. If you would have told me it would be topping the charts, I probably would be skeptical. I wouldn't believe you. But you never really know. It's a lot of factors. I'm basically rambling at this point, all to say nothing.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I was a bit disheartened at first, but then I put into perspective that outside of our bubble, the Rare fandom, the Donkey Kong fandom, the DK Vine community, outside of our bubble, a lot of people didn't know this game was coming or wasn't on their radar, as you said. And I think the near unanimous critical praise, minus one website that will remain unnamed, but suffice to say they also infamously trashed Tropical Freeze when it came out, so they are just foolish, and they are just being contrarians for clickbait, and we will not give them the time of day by actually saying their name. But the praise is going to make this a slow burner, and word of mouth is going to spread. And being an indie title, I feel like that's fine. It doesn't need to be topping the charts or being near the top of the charts the first week. I think it'll get there. I think once word of mouth spreads, because people probably budgeted for all these bigger releases on the Switch. Yeah,
this is
is coming.
It's a budget price. It's only $30.
Right, but still, people aren't made of money.
I'm saying
Jeffrey Wall Street Onan,
as it sits on the shelf over the next months or even years at the budget price that it is and the type of game that it is on the platform that the Switch is, it will get sales because it's the exact kind of game that parents pick up for their kids, especially at the price point that it's at. Tropical Freeze is still $60 on the Switch.
Which is a little ridiculous, I will admit. I will pay that for Donkey Kong. I would pay $500 for the pleasure of Donkey Kong. But
I'm just saying, if I'm a parent, like all of our callers are to their daughters, I would see Impossible Lair. I would see the price point and the style of game it is, and I might, if I'm a particularly conscientious parent, I might look at the reviews for it, and then I'll say, hell yeah, let's get this one. And then they get it.
But yeah, I think, between Luigi's Mansion 3 coming out on Halloween, Link's Awakening, the fancy reboot just coming out, your Fire Emblems and what have you. There's just too much happening in this time of year for that. If this wasn't on your radar, if it wasn't like me or you, where like we were all primed and ready for this game, and this is what we had marked on our calendar for the month of October, then yeah, it's going to be something you'll pick up later. And I feel like the absolute like fanaticism this game is causing people to develop for it, that will definitely make more people interested. And as word of mouth spreads, it will continue to grow and build. And like I said, it's a slow burner. So wouldn't worry about that.
I'll tell you right now, if you're a viewer at home, a listener, don't even buy that Pokemon game. It's not going to be that good. You should buy Yooka-Laylee because it's better.
Look, I'm a biased little piece of shit, so I'm not going to like sit here and say buy this over this, because of course I'm going to say that, right? Like this is the extent of my gaming, essentially, is the DKU. But really, like, you should consider it. If you've listened this far
in this podcast, if you're a fan of this podcast, you're going to love this game. Like, yeah.
And also pick up Red Rose Speedway while you're at it. Just do it. Like,
there's a remaster, I think, of it.
You?
Yeah.
They did do that. They released in a big fancy remaster a couple of years ago. It's in a big book or whatever.
The songs are in 4K now.
Yeah. Exactly. So there you go. Also, you might be able to get on Bandcamp. I don't know. But anyway, they also had
Buy it for your daughters.
Yeah, your daughters will love.
Did they have a question?
Early 70s Paul McCartney. Yeah, about whether Platonic should ever do a Donkey Kong game proper.
We've talked so much that I forgot that was part of the call. Well, you start. I want to hear what you got to say on that one.
I'd be fine either way. Like, if they just want to keep developing things with their own characters, they proved that they can make that just as rewarding and fulfilling an experience as a Donkey Kong game. However, if the opportunity arose and Nintendo was wanted it, and they had like creative control to do what they wanted, and they wanted to do it, of course I wouldn't say no to that. Like that. So basically, to answer your question, whatever, either way, right?
Yeah, I think before this game, people had presented the idea, like, well, hey, this team of former Rare devs, many of them worked on Donkey Kong Country, they're no longer beholden to the Microsoft brand, they can make Nintendo games, why don't they make Donkey Kong games? And, before this game, I took that with a huge grain of salt. It just seemed like a pipe dream that, it just was not on the table.
It seemed like magical thinking that didn't actually take into context the way reality works.
Right. After this game, I do fully feel like Platonic could handle it. In a way that I wasn't sure if they could before. This game really raises their stock to the point where I would trust them. I'm going to be fully on board with every project they have going forward, because we know what they're capable of. They're without when they don't have any of the limitations that the first game had on their development, they can knock it out of the park. So I think they're capable of Donkey Kong tier. If they were given the IP, they would knock it out of the park. There's obviously incredible politics involved in putting something like that together. Like, the relationships would have to be there for the communication lines to open, and it would just be like a lightning in a bottle. Everything would have to line up perfectly for it to happen. And I think I'm just with Hyle. If it didn't happen, I will still be super happy with the universe that Platonic is building. I might be even more happy. It's hard to say when I don't see, if I could see both universes and pick one, it's hard to say which was it better. So
the fact in the second battalion member you rescue in the biography, they straight up mention zingers as if they exist within this world. So even if they never make a Donkey Kong game, I still feel like the spirit will be there, and you'll have little homages and straight up references like that, that it almost feels like they have made a Donkey Kong game because it feels just so much part of that, you know?
Right.
There's more Donkey Kong references in this game than there were in fucking Returns.
There's fans of Rare that are there's such a big fan of Donkey Kong Country that they really want more of that. There's fans of Rare that are such a big fan of Banjo-Kazooie, they want a new Banjo-Kazooie and nothing else. And if that is how your brain operates, then you can't change that. That's fine. But I do feel like if you are just a fan of those kinds of games that Rare made, Playtonic is scratching the itch, man. Like, I'm not getting a Donkey Kong game on the Switch, like the new Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah.
But I am getting a game that is scratching my Rare itch, my Banjo-Kazooie fan itch, my Donkey Kong Country fan itch, and, you know, it's doing its own thing, too. So that's what is really the triumph of this game, is that it's scratching all these itches and it's carving new territory in its own universe as well at the same time.
You know, I got a Rare itch after I...
after you went down on Rosie the Robot.
I couldn't even say it. I was like fully committed to the bit, and then as soon as I went to, I was like, "Oh, this is just a terrible thing to say out loud."
I'm glad you just you could have accused me of fucking a dog, and that would have been not my favorite. But thank you for not doing that. You only did it 3 times.
Luckily, I have this Victorian fainting couch at the ready because I just gave myself the vapors.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. Basically, because we have one more call to get to, so I'll just wrap it up here. If you're a fan of Donkey Kong, and you are, you will this will make you almost as big of a fan of Yooka-Laylee as it does Donkey Kong, because it scratches all those itches that those classic Donkey Kong Country games did. And the reason you're a fan of those is here in this game. So it's almost like I just want more Yooka-Laylee games from Playtonic. I'm fine either way, because this has done such a great job of building up all of those things, this world in my mind. So yeah, thank you for the call and congratulations on the goose. Right?
That's a good one. Yeah. All right. Let's get this next call.
He said something about a goose. Somebody said something about a goose.
I brought up the goose game.
Well, Jeff, I'm sorry. Congratulations on the goose.
I don't even have that goose
game.
Proud. I don't get congratulations for that. Congratulations on the developers of the goose game for having such a success.
Just accept the compliment, Jeff. Why don't you accept my compliments?
I'm not used to handling compliments. You're always calling me a dog fucker.
Handle this 6th call, then. Handle it.
Hey, Kongversation. This is Andre calling in for the first time in a while to talk about Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Just kind of speaking off the cuff here, but I think this game is absolutely fantastic. When it was revealed around E3, I thought it looked promising. I thought it was a smart direction for them to go in. I was optimistic for it. That was kind of the extent of my enthusiasm. I didn't play much of the first Yooka-Laylee, so maybe if I had completed it, I would be more enthusiastic. But yeah, this game has blown all the expectations I had going in totally out of the water. Something you've talked about previously on the show is the idea that the Donkey Kong Country fandom would be better served by not clinging on to the long-held idea of a Donkey Kong Country 4, because, we had Returns. For all intents and purposes, that was Country 4. And, not recognizing it as such risked devaluing all the great work Retro did for the series. And I agree, but, I'm sorry. I can't think of a better way to phrase it, but, this feels like we got a Donkey Kong Country 4 and a new Retro game. It's insane. The ways that it's similar to the Retro games are kind of obvious, but your big criticism of Returns has been that it in a lot of ways. Like the example was the map screen. It didn't feel like it was picking up where Country 3 left off, and the overworld in this game just blows that out of the water. It almost feels as big a part of the game as like the actual levels. It's crazy. And something Platonic is like in their Yooka-Laylee commentaries talked about a lot was that they were actually under fairly limited resources despite the Kickstarter success. And this game, I felt that playing the first Yooka-Laylee. I do not feel it in this game. It's completely gorgeous. It's so big and so varied. The soundtrack is so great. Like, I can't think of enough good things to say about it. Maybe this sounds extreme, I don't know, but like, I think this is as good as getting a new Donkey Kong Country. Platonic, any of you who might be listening to this, you guys hit Arc. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, that'll do it. Thank you.
Wow, Andre, that is, you got this down to a science, because there is an infamous 3-minute cutoff period on the DK Vine hotline. So 3 minutes and you're cut off. He wrapped up his call and actually said his last word at 3 minutes and like 14 microseconds. So like he got in just as the cutoff came clamping down on him. I'm in awe of what he just accomplished. That's like when you're pumping gas and you like land on a round number, like no sense.
Yeah,
just
but you can't.
up,
The problem is that there's the gallons counting and there's the money counting, and so if for both of them to land on a round number it never happens.
Don't get distracted by the gallons, man. Just look at the money. Like I like I've spent 25. I've spent $25 on my gasoline at this pump, and not a cent more or less.
Isn't it nice to hit exactly 15 gallons? Isn't that nice?
No,
or whatever.
No. That's not the game, Jeff. That's not the game we agreed to when we went to this pump.
Respect the game.
And
I bet the pump tastes rusty.
Oh, yeah, no, you don't want to drink that pump. You don't want to squirt some gasoline in your mouth, or some petrol, as they say, over in the UK, which is what I call the UK, because I don't know how words work. You don't want to squirt in your mouth. Out of all the things you could squirt in your mouth, that's probably near the bottom of the list.
Find something better to squirt in your mouth. Back to the call, though. There's 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I have an attention span that is shorter than 3 minutes. So come on, I will respect the skill in landing the call in exactly 3 minutes, but I won't respect wasting 3 whole minutes of my time. You got to get, somebody in here had a call that was like 8 seconds long. Give that guy a medal. That guy is the one who's impressive.
I was just asking if chameleons have ears.
Yes. Quick question, quick answer, move it on, man. I don't need 3 minutes of your life story. Some of these people are having daughters. I'm just kidding. Congratulations on the daughter, first off and foremost. But the question, what was the question?
There's no question. It was just commentary.
Donkey Kong Country 4 was kind of a theme there. Is this game like a Donkey Kong Country 4?
It was basically saying this is kind of like the best of both worlds, because it's Donkey Kong Country 4, but it's taken a lot of the good
3 minutes
the good crunchy
and
bits.
No question?
No, listen, he's taking the good crunchy bits of the retro games and melding it with what is very much conceptually a Donkey Kong Country 4, if there was a Donkey Kong Country 4 by Rare alum. And it's melding the two together into this beautiful package. And he said it's basically like better than a Donkey Kong Country 4. And like I'm almost to that point where I'm like, yeah, I agree. I agree. Like Donkey Kong Country 4 is Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like I would never want there to be a game called Donkey Kong Country 4, because that would be disrespectful to Returns and Tropical Freeze. But this is exactly what I always hoped pre-returns that would look like. And, like, honestly, this exceeds what I had hoped for. So in that kind of logic train, I will say, yeah, I agree. This is better than Donkey Kong Country 4.
You know, I do want to say on that point that, you know, there was... It had come out some years ago. My brain is so old in you know, ragged Hyle, so it's hard for me to remember these things. But there was some years ago, many years, because you and I are both ancient, and it had come out that the handheld team at Rare had considered or pitched doing a Donkey Kong Country 4 on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
And of course you remember that, because that's big knowledge. We got to remember those things. So knowing, you know, as just an example, Gary Richards' involvement with this game, possibly other members of the handheld team, but obviously very much a lot of influence by the design of the handheld top-down games that have gone into Impossible Lair. You know, there's so much of that is in this game. Things like Grunty's Revenge, Pocket Tales, Saberwolf. Playing this game, I got my imagination running, thinking this is kind of very possibly or very likely what a Donkey Kong Country 4 would have played like if that handheld team had made Donkey Kong Country 4 on the DS. You know, with the way they incorporate the 2D levels with the 3D overworld. Obviously, the handheld team also did the Country trilogy ports. So they had experience doing Country 2D levels. By the time they did Country 3 GBA, they had already done a whole extra world. They added a whole world of levels. So I don't know. At the time when that news came out, I was a little bit like, I don't know if I want the handheld team to do a Donkey Kong Country 4. It might feel lesser. But after seeing what Impossible Lair has learned from the handheld team's games, I could see that's probably how it would have gone, and it would have been really good. And this is really good, so it's great.
Yeah, it's hard to say, like, going back in time, what that would have looked like. And obviously, this is not just the handheld team. You know, we've got the Gary Richards connection, but yeah.
I'm just saying because of the top-down gameplay style that it seems to evolve from.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's just the handheld team, but...
Right. But we've also got, you know, Chris Sutherland and Steve Mails on art, and, you know, and... We've got, you know, Kev Bayless, and just, you know, the Playtonic is such a unique collective of people from various Rare teams and new hires too that had never worked for Rare. So it is just, it's fascinating, all these disparate influences that kind of pull together here to make this game. And we might have had something similar on the DS had Nintendo said, yes, we want you to make a Donkey Kong Country 4, but I'm kind of glad everything happened the way it did. I'm glad we got this instead. Yeah. And we got it when we did, because I just feel like this is honestly one of my favorite games of all time, and it's going to go down like that. Where it is on the rankings, I don't know. Is it above Grab by the Ghoulies? Do I dare say that? I don't want to make such wild proclamations now. That would be headline news, and I don't need to wake up in the morning to read that I like this better than Grab by the Ghoulies.
You're the opposite of the clickbait type of, you know. Really, you should come out and say the Impossible Lair is structured like Breath of the Wild, but it makes that game look like dog shit.
Yeah, I should say that.
If you say that,
you know,
we'll get all the clicks.
I really should be better. You know, I complain that YouTube has demonetized me, and it's probably because I'm not offensive enough.
I think you're plenty offensive to me, but you're not offensive to the audience enough. Yeah.
And plus, I'm offensive to that dog you had relations with.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's that bullshit right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Is this okay? I said screw the pooch like once, and now dog fucker is the joke.
Congratulations on your dog tour, by the way.
I wonder if dogs taste rusty.
Rusty Pup does.
Boom. That's a reference. All right.
Bagow!
Bagow! This episode's in the bag.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.